Good morning, everyone. So I've been getting a lot of questions about my financial situation. I've made some references to how bad my financial situation is and that I've been trying really aggressively to get out of it. And you guys have been asking a lot about that, and they're very wide, generic questions, very broad questions. So what I'm going to do is basically just make a video detailing how I got into my financial situation, so from 2020 to now. I'm also going to go over what I did to recover myself from this financial situation, and I spent a lot of money on lawyers trying to sort all this out. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not providing any legal advice, but I do want to just explain how this process went for me so that you guys don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on a lawyer. And I'm also going to cover what I'm doing right now and what I'm going to continue doing in the future to try and get myself to the point of being able to support a family. I think, like a lot of people, my bad financial situation started in 2020 when COVID was happening. One thing that definitely contributed to setting me back was the fact that my job was becoming a whole lot less reliable. We had to shut down for it was like 8 months that I didn't have any work at all. We didn't have any paid time off or anything like that. It was just straight up, we weren't working. And, with that, it sort of started to come back and I started to be able to work again, and it was still making a whole lot of money, but I was only working about a quarter as much, because what would happen is we'd come back to work for a week, someone would get diagnosed with COVID, we'd have to take 2 weeks off while they go and clean out the store, sanitize it from top to bottom. We would work another week, and then same thing again. Someone would get diagnosed with COVID, we'd have to close for 2 weeks and sanitize the whole store. So at that point, it became extremely unreliable. It was really sad because it was my best sales job by far. I was making a ton of money, and I was definitely living the high life. I had a really nice apartment. I had a really nice car. I still have the nice car that I had, but I had a secondary sports car and stuff. I had a really nice life going for me, and I was used to a very, very high-end life. So going from making so much money to making almost no money was definitely a learning curve. And even though I was working, a little bit, no one was buying anything. So there was really no sales going on. I was making pretty close to $0. Another thing that contributed to my initial problem is I have some mental health conditions going on. I have ADHD and autism. Those are like the two main things that affect me. At the time, I knew about my ADHD, but I did not know about the autism at the time, which is about to make sense here. When COVID happened, I thought the world was ending. I seriously thought that the world was going away. I thought my existence was about to end. And I was panicking, I was freaking out. I seriously was having a really hard time coping with this. And I ended up getting admitted to a mental hospital, and that ended up costing me about $25,000, which I think it's kind of funny because in my experience with that, I was telling them that I was having these financial troubles, and they're like, oh, yeah, oh, I totally understand how hard that is. Here's a $25,000 bill. I don't know. I think it's a little bit messed up how that works personally, but anyway, I got stuck with $25,000, and I just didn't even have $25,000. I was a 22-year-old, so I really didn't have a whole lot of adult real-world experience. And basically what I did was I just ignored it. I just pretended like it wasn't there, and that's definitely not the answer. It definitely made things a little bit more complicated down the road, but it kind of also ended up working out in the end. Fast forward to 2022, and this medical debt is still on the back shelf. It's not even talked about. I haven't called them or anything like that. I was just neglecting it horribly at the time, which, again, not a smart idea, but you live and you learn. Anyway, moving on to 2022, I had another major medical event, and it's hard to describe without explaining what it was. I don't really want it out there in the world, but it did end up in a hospital visit, and that ended up setting us back about $35,000. So technically on paper, it was not my responsibility, but it definitely was my responsibility. So, I voluntarily decided to pick up half of the liability for that. The total cost for that, not factoring in only my share, was about $35,000, so it's like $17,000 each. So at this point, I decided that I am moving to Oklahoma. I just needed a fresh start. My friends were moving out there. I figured this would be the perfect opportunity just to try out a new location and see what that's like. So my friends went out there, they bought a property, I moved out there with them, and we were hanging out and doing things and living off the grid together. It was pretty cool. After moving to Oklahoma, I decided to start tackling this stuff and trying to make my life better. So I hired a lawyer, and he helped me through some of the navigational stuff with debt collectors and paying back debts and stuff. So what I ended up doing at the time was I found out that you can negotiate with debt collectors, which was not something that I had known you could do before. And there were dozens of them that I had to call. I mean, there were only 2 major events with that much money associated with it, but this was between a whole bunch of different companies, ambulance companies, different hospitals, different services and stuff like that. So what I ended up doing is I just called around and basically asked all of them to prove it, that I actually had this debt and that it belonged to me and that I was liable for it. And to my surprise, about a quarter of them just sent me a letter that said, oops, we can't prove that this belongs to you, so it's gone. So that was pretty cool. I didn't know that that was a thing, and it took care of a pretty decent chunk of the debt that I had at the time. So what I did with the remaining debt and the debt collectors that were able to prove that the debt belonged to me is I just called all of them up and I tried to negotiate an offer with them. And the way that looked is I basically just made it look like that I was unable to pay it back if they really wanted to pursue it. So this was all advice given to me by the lawyer that I hired at the time, but pretty much I just didn't give any of them my address. I told them that I was homeless and I explained my situation and that I had fallen on hard times and that there's literally no way that I'm going to be able to pay back the full amount. And a lot of them were very persistent. They wanted me to pay the full amount or a lot of the full amount, or they wanted to break it up into 586 payments of $5 over the next 36 years or whatever. So this process definitely took weeks and months in a couple of cases, but what I ended up doing was if I didn't like the offer they had, I just hung up and I didn't call them for another month or 2. I just ignore all their calls. And then I'd call them back in another month or 2 and say, hey, I'm trying to resurrect this again, and I really want to make things right with you, but this is my situation, and this is what I can afford to pay. So after doing this, I was able to negotiate the $25,000 medical bill that I got during COVID down to about $7,000, and this is including all the ones that we had just completely written off because they couldn't prove that it was my debt. The medical bill for $35,000 that was inquired in 2022, we got that negotiated down to $12,000, and my portion of that was $6,000, which is pretty incredible. I thought that was really awesome that basically just calling these companies and trying to negotiate my way out of it, I saved myself, we started out with $70,000 and now we're down to $19,000. So that's over $50,000 worth of savings. That's like, for me, years worth of savings. So at that point, I set up a payment plan with all of them and I basically just agreed to pay it off over time. And then the tornado hit. So when the tornado hit, it did not completely annihilate the motorhome, but it definitely damaged it very severely and flooded everything inside, ruined it. I could not live in it. There was no way that I was able to live in the motorhome. I was living in my car for 2 weeks because it was so uncomfortable in the motorhome. That's the kind of condition that it was in. So I ended up getting about $3,000 more in debt with that one, and I had about $1,000 in my emergency fund, but it was not enough to repair the motorhome to a comfortable level. And yeah, that was very challenging, but I ended up having to delay the other payments a little bit longer, which turned out to be okay. If you call these debt collecting companies and you just explain your situation to them, most of the time they're just going to say, hey, that's cool. Things happen. We get it. They're actually a lot nicer than they sound and a lot better to work with than they sound if you're just nice and polite to them and you tell them what's going on straight up. So thankfully I got those payments delayed for another 6 months while I got back on my feet, and I had acquired another $3,000 worth of debt in the damages that I had to repair to the motorhome and my car. So that is pretty much how I got into my crippling amount of debt. So factoring all this stuff in, after negotiating down the original debts and factoring in the new debt that I acquired from the tornado, we are now about $22,000 in debt, which again, down from $70,000 is a pretty good chunk. So I decided to move back to Colorado, and that ended up being a very temporary living situation because my landlord, she was having some marriage troubles and it seemed like she was on the brink of divorce possibly. So she was making my life and the other tenants' life very miserable. So at that point, I decided to hightail it up here to Wyoming, and now we live up here. But at this point, we're trying to figure out our income. I've been doing gig apps for the last 2 years, and it seems to be by far the most efficient way to make money, at least with not owning your own business. Gig apps are like DoorDash or Grubhub or Uber Eats, apps like that you can just clock in, do some work, and then clock out whenever you feel like it, really. You don't have to report to anybody, and they're meant more as a side income, but I found that if you apply a certain strategy to them, that you can actually make a really, really killer amount of money with them. So that's been almost entirely what I've been doing up here. And of course, you know, I'm still doing special effects for haunted houses and concerts and stuff like that, but I would say that gig apps are by far my favorite and the most efficient way to make money for sure. I have applied to and tried out a couple of regular jobs up here, but none of them have worked out like I had hoped, and not nearly as well as DoorDash. I'd say the one that came closest was Verizon. I worked for a third-party Verizon store that was up here, and I'm no stranger to Verizon. I've worked for a corporate store in the past, and evidently their pay structure and how they do things is very different. When I worked for the corporate store, they were paying $16 an hour plus commissions, and this third-party store up here only pays commissions. So it was a sharp drop in pay for sure, but I'm no stranger to commission-only work. I've worked sales before. With the sales that I made and the commissions I earned, I was making about $3,000 to $4,000 a month at this Verizon store, which was pretty good for a job, but the problem lies in that I was making $3,000 to $4,000 per month, and I was working 40 hours per week. Now, in comparison to DoorDash and Uber Eats and gig apps like that, if you're working them correctly and you have a decent strategy for them, at least in my case, I can reliably make about $4,000 to $6,000 per month working 40 hours per week. This is factoring in my fuel cost, my maintenance cost, and insurance cost for the car. So when I was comparing them side by side, I would look at working 40 hours a week at both, and 40 hours a week on gig apps, I'd make like $4,000 to $6,000 per month. And 40 hours a week at Verizon, I'd make like $3,000 to $4,000 per month. So already the pay difference is obvious that DoorDash is going to be the better option here. Verizon definitely had the benefit of giving me a significant discount on my phone bill for 6 months. I got 50% off my phone bill for 6 months, even after I stopped working there. But it's not enough to offset the DoorDash. I also now had a manager, and I had to report at a certain time, and I had to be there on a certain schedule, and I really didn't have any freedom with this job at all. And not to mention, you know, I had to put up with really crappy upper management, super strict management. I had to basically write an email every day about why the store was sucking so bad. With DoorDash, I didn't have to deal with any of that, and I'm making a little bit more money. I can clock in and clock out whenever I feel like it. If I'm tired, I can just go home and take a nap and then get back to it. If I don't want to work as much today, I don't have to. I can work more tomorrow. So really, it doesn't make any sense to have a regular job in this day and age when you have all these gig apps that are paying you significantly more and providing a whole lot more convenience. YouTube is another income source that I'm working on right now, and it is now making over $1,000 per month, so I can contribute a lot more time and effort into my YouTube channels. Mostly it's been affiliate marketing, and what that is basically I'll review a product or I'll talk about a product. I'll leave a link in the description, you go purchase the product, and then I get a commission for it. So with that, I'm making over $1,000 per month, and I'm making $0 in YouTube ad revenue. You need a certain amount of subscribers and watch time to qualify for that portion of it. So right now, 100% of that money is just coming from affiliate commissions. I did set up a couple of savings accounts for my YouTube channel. So I have one that I contribute $20 a month to, and that is specifically saving up for video equipment, audio equipment, a new computer, because this one is starting to become not quite enough for what I'm doing. The other account, I put $20 per month into it as well, but that one is specifically for purchasing products to review in the future. Right now, I'm just going around and reviewing everything that I've installed in the bus. So like my EcoFlow, my mini split, this futon is about to be reviewed. I'm doing a whole bunch of tests with batteries right now. You know, things like that, I can just test for free because I already have them. But with the secondary account that I opened up, the intention is to save a little bit of money and set it aside so that when I run out of things to review, I can start purchasing things to review then. Since doing product reviews, I have gotten a lot of offers for free products in exchange for a review. Most of these that I've tried out have been awful products, and obviously they're going to expect that you give them a positive review if they give it to you for free. So I have been trying to avoid the free ones as much as I possibly can. I've noticed that a lot of other review channels, they almost entirely talk about good things and they never talk about bad things. One thing that sort of sets me apart from everybody else is I feel like I'm pretty straight up and honest. I try to give everyone the good, the annoying, and the bad parts of every product. A lot of products that I review have a lot of good things, and some of them have a lot of bad things. And so far, it seems like every free product that I've gotten has had almost entirely bad things. Like my cat litter box is an example. That's one that I posted. I haven't posted any of the rest of them just because they specifically requested that I didn't. I'm also focusing really hard on investing in my future. So I am getting back into the stock market. I have a little bit of experience with the stock market, but not a whole lot. The trading platform that I'm using to do this is Robinhood, and I'm gonna leave my affiliate link to Robinhood down below. If you use that affiliate link, you will get a free stock and I'll get a free stock. Before you sign up for Robinhood, though, definitely look into the company and some of the things they've done. There has been a little bit of sketchiness going on in the background, but I have determined, at least for my specific application, it doesn't really affect me, and it's the easiest by far to use. Anywho, I'm contributing another $20 per day to investments and building up my investment portfolio, and eventually I'd like to be making all my money with dividends. If I make over $100 in a day, then I'm just going to contribute a quarter of whatever I made that day to investments. So typically on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I only make about $100 on DoorDash. And then on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, it seems like I make usually about $200 to $300. So those days I'm going to be setting aside a much bigger chunk of the profit. I'm also going to contribute another $20 per day to just my regular savings accounts to help cover for emergency situations and unexpected expenses. Being at ground zero feels amazing, and it's like this giant weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I don't have to think about that or worry about that or have to worry about making a minimum payment anymore. It's awesome. We're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore, but I want to continue living sort of along the lines of living paycheck to paycheck, just so that whenever I have a family, I have a nice little collection of money and a very cushy savings account to be able to support and spoil my kids. I think that's my number one priority right now, and my number one motivator is just focusing on my future and my future family. That's definitely helping inspire me to do all of this. Well, that's all I have to say about that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to my channel for more future videos just like this one. And I will see you in the next video.